Hi everyone, welcome to Tales of Dread. Today, we're going to start with a story from a woman who was hiking in the Great Smoky Mountains and was being chased by something so disgusting that she almost threw up on the trail. Then we hear stories from people who saw what happened. Their lives have been changed so much that they aren't sure if they are still sane. In the meantime, did you know that according to my current statistics, 67% of you who listen still need to click that subscribe button? I'd love it if you joined the crowd and helped me get that number down. I'm going to watch great. Let's start with the stories. The story I want to tell you here happened in North Carolina in the year 2021. But I'm living in southern West Virginia right now and writing this to you from there. That's also where I was living when this happened. On the weekend in question, when this happened, I had gone camping alone in the area of the Great Smoky Mountains in the south. It was a place I found on my own, and you can also go hiking there. At this time in my life, things were going on with me, and I needed to be alone to get away from some things and also clear my head. I really needed the fresh air after being stuck inside for almost 2 years, you know, that whole COVID thing. So I drove down on Friday night, set up camp, and went to bed early. The first night was uneventful. I wanted to get up early, so I did that the next morning. I didn't waste any time getting ready to leave because I wanted to avoid the heat of the day. Always good for a while, but by the time I got to the top of this steep trail, I was puffing and huffing. So I stopped to catch my breath, and in the distance, I saw a dog that wasn't on a leash. At first, this annoyed me, but other than the fact that it wasn't on a leash, I didn't notice anything strange about it. However, it was coming toward me, and as it got closer, I realized how big it was. It was much bigger than any other dog, and it was only moving with its back legs. I saw that it had reddish-brown fur and was huge, easily the size of a bear, but I had no idea what it was because of the way it stood. I looked around to see if anyone else was on the trail, but I was alone. It was just me and this thing standing on this mountain trail in the middle of nowhere, with no one, no help, and nothing else in sight. As I realized that this could be a dangerous situation, I started to feel afraid. I didn't know what this thing was, so I didn't know if it would attack me or not. I was scared because I didn't know what would happen or what was going on. I mean, there was no one else there. So it looks like this thing did not belong to anyone. And I started to worry about all the possible bad things that could happen. But I didn't back down. I didn't move because I thought that if I didn't, it would just go away. Now, don't think I did this because I was brave. I couldn't have moved at all, to be honest. Even if I had wanted to, I wouldn't have been able to because I was scared, and this thing was almost right next to me. I remember thinking, this is the end. I thought it was going to kill me, but then it stopped just a few feet away and just looked at me. Well, more like they just looked at me. I looked into its piercing eyes, and I could have sworn it was talking to me at that moment. I just knew it could think like me because I could feel it. And now it didn't seem angry, just curious, like how a dog would run up to you quickly and then stop and just look at you. Then, all of a sudden, it turned around and walked away, but it didn't go back on the trail. It left the trail and went into the woods, where I could no longer see it. That's when my other senses kicked in, and I could also smell it. It smelled like rotten eggs, and the smell hit me so hard that I almost threw up right there on the trail. I sat down in the middle of the trail for a while to catch my breath and try to figure out what was going on. I felt like my head was going to explode, and if someone had seen me at that time, they would have thought I was crazy. But all I could think about was how this dog-like thing wasn't a real dog. By any means. Some kind of wild animal just walked up to me and looked right at me as if it knew me or something. I knew this creature could have killed me easily, but it didn't seem like it wanted to. I think it was just curious to see me up close. Check me out. I can't stop thinking about it, even though I don't remember every detail. It comes back to me in waves, like flashbacks, usually when I'm not thinking about it. The whole thing probably lasted no more than a minute or two. But when I think about it now, it seems like it happened in slow motion and took a long time. In some ways, I even wonder if it really happened. After that, I took a big drink of water because I didn't believe my own eyes and thought I might have hallucinated because I was dehydrated. Then I turned around and went back to the campsite, made lunch, and sat there for a while, probably in shock. But I decided not to stay another night, so I packed up and went straight home. I'm still not sure what the thing wanted, why it was there, or even what it was. I only know it wasn't mad or angry because I'm still here to tell the story. I'm just glad it didn't kill me, no matter what. That would have been the end of my story, but I got away with my life. Back in the early 2000s, when I went to see my uncle and grandfather, my uncle would take me out into the back country on his motorcycle. They lived in the middle of nowhere in Minnesota, where there were miles and miles of beautiful back roads that were rarely used. This made them great for riding a motorcycle on. I have many happy memories of going riding with my uncle in the evenings for 30 minutes to an hour and just enjoying the wind in your face. We saw a few bull elks here and there on a few occasions. Seeing that was pretty cool. I saw more deer than I could count, but I thought that was normal when I was out in the country. But then everything went wrong for me. When my uncle decided to take me on a motorcycle ride one night, it was the first time he had ever done so at night. So I was very excited about the trip. Plus, he said he would take a different route than he usually does. This made me even happier. I was only about 9 years old at the time, so I was still very young and easy to influence. We got on his bike and started riding. He took us down some roads I wasn't too familiar with, and they branched off from our usual routes. I was having the time of my life, even though there weren't many streetlights around because we were in the middle of nowhere. I felt safe with my uncle, though. It's hard to say how long we had been riding before it happened. But at some point, my uncle and I were driving down one of the roads when we heard a loud crash to the right of the road. It sounded like one of those Tomcat construction machines that people drive around. It was so loud that I remember thinking, is construction going on right now, this late at night? This is true, and I don't want you to think I'm crazy, so I'll say it again. When the trees part, this big demon thing jumps out on all fours and starts running after our motorcycle. I'm yelling like a sailor. And when my uncle puts it in high gear, we fly down the road. I was behind him, so I didn't really know how fast we were going. But if I had to guess, I'd say we were going 80 or 90 miles per hour. Whatever was chasing us was keeping up with us and getting closer and closer. I don't know what the hell it was, but the closest thing I can think of is the scene at the end of the 2003 Van Helsing movie where he fights Dracula and turns into a huge, scary-looking wolf-like creature. What I saw seemed about the same size and height as that. The face looked a lot like a big snout full of crocodile teeth. Its eyes kind of glowed like a dog's, like a red-orange color. I thought it looked like a cross between a crocodile and a wolf, with a little bit of a human, and a demon thrown in. The thing was huge and made both me and my uncle in the bike look small. If I had to guess, I would say it was about 7 feet tall on all fours and had a head as big as my uncle's. It chased us for a minute and then got very close to the bike, like it was going to reach out and grab us, but then it just jumped off into the woods and disappeared. Even when we got back to his house, I was still crying and screaming. What happened to me that night was one of the scariest things I've ever been through. I had to go to therapy for a while because seeing something like that really messed me up. I think my uncle gave up on his motorcycle license for a while, but I didn't really talk to him about it or know how he felt after that. I stopped riding on his bike with him, and for a while, I shut down. I stopped going over there, and I found out a few years later that my uncle had a huge heart attack. It's too bad, because we were friends at the time. I probably should have asked him how he's dealing with everything, but I guess I'll never know. I really want to know what it is. I don't think it was any animal I've ever seen or heard of, and when I say it looked big and evil, I mean it. This thing looked like it came straight from hell, and you could feel the evil coming off of it. I've never been so scared before. I also think that some of it was because I think it was messing with us. This thing was so big that it could have caught up to us, pulled us off our bikes, and eaten us right there. It didn't even seem to be trying to keep up with us. It was almost like it was trying to show us that it could get us whenever it wanted and that we were helpless. I can't get rid of those feelings. I don't know what you want to call it, but whatever it was that I saw that night, it was evil, and I would never wish that on anyone. It was late October 2017, and Halloween was coming up. At the time, I lived in New Hampshire. Some friends and I decided to go to one of those big city Halloween parties, but we found out later that it was for teens. I thought it would be boring. Like every other party I'd been to before, I couldn't have been more wrong if I'd done that. Halloween night is something I will never forget. My mom made my costume, and I didn't want to hurt her feelings, so I wore it anyway. My friends were all dressed in way cooler costumes than mine, but I'll admit that we were all ready to relax and have a good time for the rest of the night. There was only one problem. We had to go through a cemetery that was known for being scary to get to the party. I felt like it went on for miles. It looked like a sea of gravestones that went on and on. Even though it was perfect for Halloween, I really liked how creepy it was. All of my friends were taking pictures in front of old, creepy tombstones and mausoleums made of granite. It looked like an old place. They all waved at me to join them in their photo shoot, but I was looking at something else, and that's when things started to get really strange. From the shadows behind the mausoleum, they looked out. I saw two bright yellow dots that looked like eyes. It seemed like they were calling me, and I started walking past my friends and got closer and closer. I could see a nose and grey fur as I got closer. The smoky grey nose let out a low, guttural growl. It didn't sound like bad intentions. It was more like being restless and unhappy. Its head slowly poked out from the shadows, and then I could see it much better in the bright moonlight. It had fur all over its body, from its head to its collarbone. The upper torso was completely human, but it was almost triangular in shape, with huge, muscular arms that seemed to get thinner all the way down to the waist. From the waist down, the body went back to being a dog. It had a long, fluffy tail that stood up straight behind it. I think it was trying to figure out whether I was a friend or foe. I put out my hand because I thought it was some kind of dog, and I took a few steps toward it. I stopped just as quickly, though, because I could see bits of medium brown hidden by the grey-black. It was very pretty, and I almost wanted to touch it. Those mysterious eyes were wild, like a wolf, but they were also curious and kind, like a dog. I know it's strange, but I like strange and unusual things. I moved again toward it, but this time more slowly. The creature moved a few steps toward me, and I could see the moon in its wet nose, but I wasn't scared. I was thinking that if it was dangerous, it would have attacked me right away if it was mean. My boyfriend waved his arm at me and told me to come back to the group. When I heard his voice, I gasped. It must have also scared the animal, because it stood still. Its ear twitched for a moment, and then it turned around and ran back into the forest. It was so strange, but it was gorgeous. It is part of nature. We didn't have a place for it. People might have used it for some weird experiment or something, so I was glad it went away. I wondered if anything else was like it. I mean that there must have been one for there to be one. The rest of the night, I kept thinking about it. How many people get to see something like that is really incredible? Not many. I remember that as my friends and I went on our way that night, the moon was very bright. I thought I saw a familiar black and brown tail in the trees, so I looked for it with my eyes closed. But I couldn't see it even with my glasses on. That was the one and only time I ever saw this creature again. I told my friends what I had seen later. My boyfriend thought I was making it up. My friends all thought I was being overly dramatic to get them in the Halloween spirit. One thing is certain, though. I'll never forget how crazy those yellow eyes were.